Okay, we are at book 23, and as you know, Odysseus has just slaughtered all of the insolent suitors, and so that was quite a scene in book 22. And now we're in book 23, and we're going to start off up in Penelope's bedroom, where Eurycleia is going to go get her, and then we're going to see the encounter between the two of them. So here we go. All right. The old nurse went upstairs exulting. Make sure you're on page 429. With knees toiling and patter of slapping feet to tell the mistress of her lord's return, and cried out by the lady's pillow, "Wake, wake up, dear child. Penelope, come down. See with your own eyes what all these years you longed for. Odysseus is here. Oh, in the end he came, and he has killed your suitors, killed them all who made his house a bordel, and ate his cattle and raised their hands against his son." Penelope said, "Dear nurse, the gods have touched you." You know, one of the things that we talked about before is, does Penelope really know? Does she know it's Odysseus? Does she not know it's Odysseus? And all of that ambivalence makes the story really exciting. And so here we're going to kind of see, well, maybe she really doesn't know. Penelope said, "Dear nurse, the gods have touched you. They can put chaos into the clearest head or bring a lunatic down to earth. Good sense you always had. They touched you. What is this mockery you wake me up to tell me, breaking in on my sweet spell of sleep? I had not dozed away so tranquilly since my lord went to war on that ill wind to Ilion." How is she sleeping through all the noise downstairs, I tell you? "Oh, leave me, back downstairs. If any other of my women came in babbling things like these to startle me, I'd see her flogged out of the house. Your old age spares you that." Eurycleia said, "Would I play such a trick on you, dear child? It is true, as I tell you, he has come. The stranger they were baiting was Odysseus. Telemachus knew it days ago, cool head, never to give his father away till he paid off those swollen dogs." The lady in her heart's joy now sprang up with sudden dazzling tears and hugged the old one, crying out, "But to make it clear, if he came home in secret, as you say, could he engage them single-handed? How? They were all down there still in the same crowd." To this Eurycleia said, "I did not see it. I knew nothing. Only I heard the groans of men dying. We sat still in the inner rooms, holding our breath and marveling, shut in, until Telemachus came to the door and called me, your own dear son, sent this time by his father. So I went out and found Odysseus erect with dead men littering the floor this way and that. If you had only seen him, it would have made your heart glow hot. A lion splashed with mire and blood." Okay, apparently that must have been a really, today I think it would be interesting, when you look at like social media, how guys are standing there and what they look like and trying to make themselves look all, hot and really dazzling the girls or whatever. Apparently back then, if you were like splashed with mire and blood standing a bunch of dead men that you just killed like a lion, it would have made your heart glow hot. Apparently that was the ticket to really get a girl's heart back then. "But now the cold corpses are all gathered at the gate, and he has cleansed his hall with fire and brimstone, a great blaze. Then he sent me here to you. Come with me. You may both embark this time for happiness together after pain, after long years. Here is your prayer, your passion granted. Your own lord lives. He is at home. He found you safe. He found his son. The suitors abused his house, but he has brought them down." The attentive lady said, "Do not lose yourself in this rejoicing. Wait. You know how splendid that return would be for us, how dear to me, dear to his son and mine. But no, it is not possible. Your notion must be wrong. Some god has killed the suitors, a god sick of their arrogance and brutal malice, for they honored no one living, good or bad, whoever came their way. Blind young fools, they've tasted death for it. But the true person of Odysseus, he lost his home, he died far from Achaia." The old nurse sighed. How queer the way you talk. Here he is large as life by his own fire, and you deny he will ever get home? Child, you always were mistrustful. But there is one sure mark that I can tell you. That scar left by the boar's tusk long ago. I recognized it when I bathed his feet and would have told you, but he stopped my mouth, forbade me in his craftiness. Come down, I stake my life on it. He's here. Let me die in agony if I lie. Penelope said, Nurse dear, though you have your wits about you, still it is hard not to be taken in by the immortals. Let us join my son, though, and see the dead, and that strange one who killed them. So here in this book, it seems like she doesn't know him at all. She turned then to descend the stair, her heart in tumult. Had she better keep her distance and question him, her husband? Should she run up to him, take his hands, kiss him now? Isn't this beautiful how right now the bard is connecting the two of them by letting us see her inner thoughts just the way we see Odysseus's inner thoughts. So already he's beginning to close the gap between the two of them. Had she better keep her distance and question him, her husband? Should she run up to him, take his hands, kiss him now? Crossing the door sill, she sat down at once in firelight against the nearest wall across the room from the Lord Odysseus. There, leaning against a pillar, sat the man, and never lifted up his eyes, but only waited for what his wife would say when she had seen him. And she for a long time sat deathly still in wonderment, for sometimes as she gazed she found him, yes, clearly like her husband, but sometimes blood and rags were all she saw. Telemachus's voice came to her ears, Mother, cruel mother, do you feel nothing drawing yourself apart this way from father? Will you not sit with him and talk and question him? What other woman could remain so cold, who shuns her lord, and he come back to her from wars and wandering after 20 years? Your heart is hard as flint and never changes. Here's what's interesting about Telemachus's comment. There's an irony here. He is rebuking her, scolding her for being so cold and hard-hearted and, her heart being hard as flint and never changing. But those are the very qualities that she needed in order to keep herself strong for Odysseus and not to be taken in by anyone. Penelope answered, I am stunned, child. I cannot speak to him. I cannot question him. I cannot keep my eyes upon his face. If really he is Odysseus truly home, beyond all doubt we two shall know each other better than you or anyone. There are secret signs we know, we two. Oh, they have these two, they have signs together. They have secrets that only the two of them know. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. A smile came now to the lips of the patient hero Odysseus, who turned to Telemachus and said, Peace, let your mother test me at her leisure. Before long she will see and know me best. These tatters, dirt, all that I'm caked with now, make her look hard at me and doubt me still. As to this massacre, we must see the end. Whoever kills one citizen, and has no force of armed men at his back, had better take himself abroad by night and leave his kin. Well, we cut down the flower of Ithaca, the mainstay of the town. Consider that. He's saying, you know what? If anybody finds out that we've killed all these suitors, they're going to come after us. So we need to figure out a plan. Telemachus replied respectfully, Dear father, enough that you yourself study the danger, foresighted in combat as you are. They say you have no rival. But we three stand ready to follow you and fight. I say, for what our strength avails, we have the courage. Philoidios, Eumaeus, and Telemachus. And the great tactician Odysseus answered, Good. Here is our best maneuver as I see it. Bathe, you three, and put fresh clothing on. Order the women to adorn themselves, and let our admirable harper choose a tune for dancing, some light-hearted air, and strum it. Anyone going by or any neighbor will think it is a wedding feast he hears. These deaths must not be cried about the town till we can slip away to our own woods. We'll see what weapon then Zeus puts into our hands. They listened attentively and did his bidding, bathed and dressed afresh, and all the maids adorned themselves. Then Phemios the harper took his polished shell and plucked the strings, moving the company to desire for singing, for the sway and beat of dancing, until they made the manor hall resound with gaiety of men and grace of women. Anyone passing on the road would say, Married at last, I see, the queen so many courted, sly, cattish wife, she would not keep, not she, the lord's estate until he came. They would say, Boy, she didn't wait very long. So travelers' thoughts might run, but no one guessed the truth. Great-hearted Odysseus, home at last, was being bathed now by your enemy and rubbed with golden oil, probably one of their other maids, and clothed again in a fresh tunic and a cloak. Athena lent him beauty head to foot. She made him taller and massive too, with crisping hair and curls like petals of wild hyacinth, but all red golden. It's the exact same description as when he came out of the water, and Athena made him look like this for Nausicaa. So here's the same description. Think of gold infused on silver by a craftsman whose fine art Hephaestus taught him, or Athena, one whose work moves to delight. Just so she lavished beauty over Odysseus' head and shoulders. He sat then in the same chair by the pillar, facing his silent wife, and said, "Strange woman, the immortals of Olympus made you hard, harder than any. Who else in the world would keep aloof as you do from her husband if he returned to her from years of trouble, cast on his own land in the 20th year?" You know, it's just this beautiful moment right now where there's this fire going, the hearth fire, and there's something really symbolic about that, the fact that husband and wife now are sitting across that hearth fire, which is the center of the home in those ancient times, talking, and him asking her, you know, how long would she wait? Who else would keep aloof? You know, how much longer are you going to put me through this torment? Nurse, then he says to the nurse, "Make up a bed for me to sleep on. Her heart is iron in her breast." Penelope spoke to Odysseus now. She said, "Strange man, if man you are, there is no pride on my part, nor scorn for you, not even wonder merely. I know so well how he appeared boarding the ship for Troy, but all the same, make up his bed for him, Eurycleia. Place it outside the bedchamber my lord built with his own hands. Pile the big bed with fleeces, rugs, and sheets of purest linen." So he says, make up a bed for me. Okay, make up the bed like my bed. And Eurycleia says, yes, make up his bed and put it outside the bedchamber. With this she tried him to the breaking point, and he turned on her in a flash, raging. Uh-oh. "Woman, by heaven, you've stung me now. Who dared to move my bed? No builder had the skill for that unless a god came down to turn the trick. No mortal in his best days could budge it with a crowbar. There is our pact and pledge, our secret sign built into that bed, my handiwork and no one else's." This is going to be so cool, because he's mad now, because if someone has taken his bed out of his room, then he's going to be really upset. Okay, let's see what he's talking about here. And this is going to be one of the major symbols in this epic poem, something that is so symbolic beyond the bed itself. Okay, listen to the description. "An old trunk of olive," page 435, around line 215. "An old trunk of olive grew like a pillar on the building plot. And I laid out our bedroom round that tree, lined up the stone walls, built the walls and roof, gave it a doorway and smooth-fitting doors. Then I lopped off the silvery leaves and branches, hewed and shaped that stump from the roots up into a bedpost, drilled it, let it serve as a model for the rest. I planed them all, inlaid them all with silver, gold, and ivory, and stretched a bed between, a pliant web of oxide thongs dyed crimson. There's our sign. I know no more. Could someone else's hand have sawn that trunk and dragged the frame away?" So when Odysseus built his house, he actually built it around the trunk of an olive tree. Talk about Athena's representation and the honor that places her as the head of their marriage, the head of their home, the head of their marriage bed, to keep it holy and honorable in Athena's sight. And he built the bed around the tree, so it's almost like he built the bed into the tree. So maybe the headboard, with the tree behind it. There's some pictures on the internet. People who've kind of tried to figure this out. And then he took the branches and he used the branches to decorate it. And after that, he built the entire house is built around the bedroom. So the tree is the center of the bed is the center of the bedroom is the center of the home. Just honoring the marriage that Odysseus and Penelope have together. "There's our sign, I know no more. Could someone else's hand have sawn that trunk and dragged the frame away?" Now you can see why he's so angry. If you're telling her to make my bed up outside my bedchambers, then some man has been there and sawed my bed that I made away from the tree. "There's secret As she heard it told, her knees grew tremulous and weak, her heart failed her. With eyes brimming tears, she ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, and kissed him, murmuring, "Do not rage at me, Odysseus. No one ever matched your caution. Think what difficulty the gods gave. They denied us life together in our prime and flowering years. They kept us from crossing into age together. Forgive me, don't be angry. I could not welcome you with love on sight. I armed myself long ago against the frauds of men, impostors who might come, and all those many whose underhanded ways bring evil on. Imagine all the all the stories, all the people coming to say that they were Odysseus or news stories. She had to harden her heart against them. Helen of Argos, daughter of Zeus and Leda, would she have joined the stranger, lain with him, if she had known her destiny, known the Achaeans in arms would bring her back to her own country? Surely a goddess moved her to adultery, her blood unchilled by war and evil coming. The years, the desolations, ours too. But here and now, what sign could be so clear as this of our own bed? No other man has ever laid eyes on it, only my slave Actorus that my father sent with me as a gift. She kept our door. You make my stiff heart know that I am yours." And now what I think is probably one of the most beautiful epic similes. You know, I love the epic similes in here, but this one just takes my breath away. "Now from his breast into his eyes the ache of longing mounted, and he wept at last, his dear wife, clear and faithful in his arms." Now watch the simile here. It's going to get really complex, but so beautiful, about someone struggling at sea and trying to get back to shore. His dear wife, clear and faithful in his arms, longed for as the sun-warmed earth is longed for by a swimmer, spent in rough water where his ship went down under Poseidon's blows, gale winds, and tons of sea. Few men can keep alive through a big surf, to crawl clotted with brine on kindly beaches, in joy, knowing the abyss behind. And so she too rejoiced, her gaze upon her husband, her white arms round him, pressed as though forever. Let's pause for just a minute and look at this. The sun-warmed earth is longed for. You know, that swimmer who's been out in the rough water, just think of Odysseus, 20 days in the sea, and what it was like for him to see landfall and get there. And he's saying that his wife is longed for. This clear, faithful Penelope in Odysseus's arms is longed for in the same way that the sun-warmed earth is longed for by a swimmer who's been in rough water, where his ship went down, under Poseidon's blows, with winds and tons of sea. Few men are able to even keep alive through a big surf, to crawl through all that brine and crawl up onto the kindly beaches in joy, knowing the abyss behind. And you would think that the very next thing it would say is, and so Odysseus rejoiced to hold and to embrace Penelope. But look what it says. And so she too rejoiced, her gaze upon her husband, her white arms round him pressed as though forever. Do you see how the bard there has intermingled the two of them into the epic simile? It doesn't say Odysseus rejoiced to hold, embrace Penelope, and it does, and Penelope did too. No, you think that the epic simile is going to be about Odysseus, about the man, and it becomes about Penelope. So the two of them are already becoming consummated together in their reunion before they're consummated together in their marriage bed. Just absolutely beautiful. The rose dawn might have found them weeping still, had not gray-eyed Athena slowed the night, when night was most profound, and held the dawn under the ocean of the east. Wouldn't that be nice to have Athena on your side to hold back the dawn and let you sleep a little longer? But she needs to give them more time at night. That glossy team, fire bright and day bright, the dawn's horses that draw her heavenward for men, Athena stayed their harnessing. She didn't harness up the horses, and fire bright and day bright are the horses that come up with the goddess dawn. Then said Odysseus, "My dear, we have not won through to the end. One trial I do not know how long is left for me to see fulfilled. Tiresias's ghost forewarned me the night I stood upon the shore of death, asking about my friend's homecoming and my own. But now the hour grows late. It is bedtime. Rest will be sweet for us. Let us lie down. He's going to spend this night with Penelope, and then he's going to have to get up tomorrow and go continue on that task, that final task that Tiresias gave him in the underworld. To this Penelope replied, "That bed, that rest is yours whenever desire moves you. Now the kind powers have brought you home at last. But as your thought has dwelt upon it, tell me, what is the trial you face? I must know soon. What does it matter if I learn tonight?" The teller of many stories said, "My strange one, must you again and even now urge me to talk? Here is a plodding tale, no charm in it, no relish in the telling. Tiresias told me I must take an oar and trudge the mainland, going from town to town, until I discover men who have never known the salt blue sea, nor flavor of salt meat, strangers to painted prows, to watercraft and oars like wings dipping across the water. The moment of revelation he foretold was this, for you may share the prophecy. Some traveler falling in with me will say, 'A winnowing fan that on your shoulders, sir?' There I must plant my oar on the very spot with burnt offerings to Poseidon of the waters, a ram, a bull, a great buck boar. Thereafter, when I come home again, I am to slay full hecatombs to the gods who own broad heaven one by one." He is recounting it detail for detail, what his final task is before he can end his life in peace. "Then death will drift upon me from seaward, mild as air, mild as your hand, in my well-tended weariness of age, contented folk around me on our island." He said, "All this must come." Penelope said, "If by the gods' grace age at least is kind, we have that promise, trials will end in peace." So he confided in her, and she answered, "Meanwhile Eurynome and the nurse together laid soft coverlets on the master's bed, working in haste by torchlight. Eurycleia retired to her quarters for the night, and then Eurynome, as maid in waiting, lighted her lord and lady to their chamber with bright brands. She vanished. So they came into that bed so steadfast, loved of old, opening glad arms to one another. Telemachus by now had hushed the dancing, hushed the women. In the darkened hall, he and the cowherd and the swineherd slept. The royal pair mingled in love again, and afterward lay reveling in stories. Hers of the siege her beauty stood at home, from arrogant suitors crowding on her sight, and how they fed their courtship on his cattle, oxen, and fat sheep, and drank up rivers of wine out of the vats. And remember, she had already told her story of the weaving trick, but she told it all. Then Odysseus told of what hard blows he had dealt out to others, and of what blows he had taken, all that story. She could not close her eyes till all was told. And then he recounts to her everything that he probably recounted to the Phaeacians. So probably 4 hours telling all of his tales here, which the bard abridges for us. But you'll notice even when he speaks of Circe and Calypso, she seems to be totally delighted, and watch why. His raid on the Cacones first of all, then how he visited the Lotus Eaters, and what the Cyclops did, and how those shipmates pitilessly devoured were avenged, then of his touching Aeolus's isle, and how that king refitted him for sailing to Ithaca. All vain, gales blew him back, groaning over the fish-cold sea. Then how he reached the Laestrygonians' distant bay, and how they smashed his ships and his companions. It's so good to just hear this recounting again, isn't it? Circe then of her deceits and magic, then of his voyage to the wide underworld of dark, the house of death, and questioning Tiresias, Theban spirit, the prophet from Thebes. Dead companions many he saw there, and his mother too. Of this he told his wife, and told how later he heard the choir of maddening sirens, coasted the wandering rocks, Charybdis' pool, and the fiend Scylla, who takes toll of men. Then how his shipmates killed Lord Helios' cattle, and how Zeus, thundering in towering heaven, split their fast ship with his fuming bolts, so all hands perished. He alone survived, cast away on Calypso's island Ogygia. He told then, watch this, how that nymph detained him there in her smooth caves, craving him for her husband, and how in her devoted lust she swore he should not die, nor grow old all his days. But he held out against her. So she would be delighted with the story to know that, wow, he picked me over immortality and a goddess. Last of all, what sea toil brought him to the Phaeacians, their welcome, how they took him to their hearts and gave him passage to his own dear island with gifts of garments, gold and bronze, remembering he drowsed over the story sleep and falling asleep. Sweet sleep relaxed his limbs and his care-burdened breast. Other affairs were in Athena's keeping. Waiting until Odysseus had his pleasure of love and sleep, the gray-eyed one bestirred the fresh dawn from her bed of paling ocean to bring up daylight to her golden chair. And from his fleecy bed Odysseus arose. He said to Penelope, "My lady, what ordeals have we not endured? Here waiting you had your grief, while my return dragged out my hard adventures, pitting myself against the gods' will, and Zeus who pinned me down far from home. But now our life resumes. We've come together to our longed-for bed. Take care of what is left me in our house. As to the flocks that pack of wolves laid waste, they'll be replenished. Scores I'll get on raids, and other scores our island friends will give me, till all the folds are full again. This day I'm off up country to the orchards. I must see my noble father, for he missed me sorely, and here is my command for you, a strict one, though you may need none, clever as you are. Word will get about as the sun goes higher of how I killed those lads. Go to your rooms on the upper floor and take your women. Stay there with never a glance outside or a word to anyone." Fitting cuirass and sword belt to his shoulders, he woke his herdsmen, woke Telemachus, ordering all in arms. They dressed quickly, and all in war gear sallied from the gate, led by Odysseus. Now it was broad day, but these 3 men Athena hid in darkness, going before them swiftly from the town. And now we're going to get to book 24, his visit with his father, and what happens when the fathers of the suitors and all the men of the town meet up with them.